it's important to not just align yourselves with customers to be successful in the sales world. It's important to not just assign yourselves with successful assistants and people that you know are going to help carry your team. It's essentially and most important to align yourself with a spouse, a significant other that is there for you. It's your ride or die. My wife has been there from the very beginning. We're dating for 3 months and she was going to go Freedom the South Course. Yeah, it's very long-winded words of advice, but aligning yourselves with the right people in your journey is ultimately going to help your success.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
Awesome. Well, today I am joined by somebody who I've gotten to know and have known for quite some time, dating myself back to when I was a superintendent at Sparrows Point. And Jason is here joining us, who has really leaned into innovation technology and really took a career in golf course management. And we always talk about diverse career opportunities and pathways. Well, Jason's somebody who really lives and breathes that. And I'm super excited to kind of reconnect with you here. It's been a bit, but Jason, I appreciate you joining the podcast today, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Tyler. And I think the world of you. And like I said earlier, I'm honored to be a part of this and share my story, share our story as a company, and what it might look like for people out there. So
I think we may have had a center line, if I remember this, is Matt Powell. I think somehow, some way was a mutual friend. Is that right?
Yeah, Matty P. I think you're friends with Kyle Callahan too, right?
Well, I don't admit that on air.
Yeah, there's a mutual friend with Kyle too. So yeah, Matt P is a really good friend of mine.
Awesome. Well, I always like to kick this off by kind of, introducing for people that don't know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of your career journey as concisely as you can, because it's quite a journey.
No, it's been a long time. I'm really dating myself when I go all the way back. I consider myself one of the old guys in the industry now. 41 years old. I have a 4-year turf degree from the University of Rhode Island. Spent some time at Oakley Country Club as an assistant in Watertown, Massachusetts. Jumped ship from there and went and worked for Scott's Lawn Care. I honestly think that's part of my journey that polished me off in the customer facing side of things before I then leaned into becoming the South Course superintendent at Stowe Acres. Shortly thereafter in 2007, I was the South Course superintendent, and shortly thereafter, the superintendent left. And I was a 36-hole golf course superintendent in 2008 at Stowe Acres Country Club here in Massachusetts. And then spent a number of years doing that. 9 seasons, actually. While I was a superintendent, though, I was big on data, and rightfully so. My owner at Stowe Acres, single owner, Walter Lankow, was also really big on data. And I didn't really have a way to keep track of this data. My mechanic at the time, Justin Parker, had a computer science degree. And I said, Justin, I need a database. And so we created a database off of the free tools that Microsoft provided. It crashed within the first 2 weeks of us running it. I said, we can't do this. We need a database that's sound. So we flipped the grid to Google Drive. I think it was at the, first stages of Google Drive. It was built for school systems and nonprofits, but we used Google Drive for everything that it offered. And then I started showing some friends, like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I gave numerous presentations at national and regional on how Google Drive can be used for the maintenance aspect of things, essentially helping guys create spreadsheets, and Google Forms and what that data could do for you. And then in 2016, it was enough of a interest in my friend group in Massachusetts that maybe I have something here. And I was building websites for people in the very, very first early stages of Google Drive. Here's your personal website. Here's your Turf Cloud actual platform. And then I knocked on the door of a local club, didn't realize that my first partner, Stephen Olson, I was actually the superintendent there, lost touch. We were college buddies, and he was like, I know a thing or two about Google Script. And then things were essentially off and running. Ran that hard for 2 years by myself. Well, obviously with Stephen Olson too. He wrote a lot of the code and script, and we had a lot of fun. GreenSight came along in 2017. For those of you that don't know GreenSight and who GreenSight is, GreenSight's the parent company, and they knocked on my door actually in 2015 when I was still a superintendent. Said, "Hey, can we fly a drone for you?" And I was like, "No, I don't really have no interest in flying a drone. I'm at the golf course, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I really know where all of my hot spots are. I know where all of my problem spots are. I don't need your drone to help me." But they did still fly a mission for me. And so, but I started thinking like outside the box, like there's other ways that we can manage turf besides spreadsheets or Google Forms, and maybe drones is that. And so they asked me to consult with the group, and from there it went, okay, well, you guys interested in acquisition? In 2018, they acquired Turf Cloud, and the rest is history, essentially.
Did you ever imagine an entrepreneur journey quite like this? Did you always have that sort of spirit in you?
I think I ultimately did. I really enjoyed calling the shots. I enjoyed essentially saying, I'm going to do this today, or I'm going to do that today, or this is my vision for the week or the month or the year. My biggest obstacle, I still have people that ask me today, well, why'd you accept acquisition? And my biggest obstacle was customer payment. It's a tough thing. I went into it as an entrepreneur that had zero investment. I don't have deep pockets. I didn't have deep pockets. I didn't have backing by dad or, Uncle Jimmy, which he doesn't even exist, but I'm just making up names. I didn't have that. So I ran into the wall of I'm a sole income provider. Ran into a pretty big obstacle in 2013, with my wife. And so I have a awesome wife. I have two beautiful children, but I have a family that I need to care for. So I was like, you know what? I'm ready. Take my business. Let's see how far this runs. So still lucky enough to be a partner. But we're having a lot of fun.
Well, I would say as somebody who knows exactly what you're talking about, it's a lot easier from the outside looking in. And I think back to being a superintendent and probably wasn't as respectful or mindful of that in the decision-making process when you're purchasing products or services from companies. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, like if you make that commitment, you got to make sure you honor that commitment. And certainly clubs run into financial struggles, periodically. And I think any business knows that. But more so now that I've been on this side, I really respect and have a very different appreciation for service providers, whether it's chemical manufacturers, equipment manufacturers, distributors, at the end of the day, fundamentally, like, hey, if you're going to make a commitment, honor that commitment because people are expecting that. And it's a different viewpoint. And as the person that's owning the business, yeah, you're right. Like it's kind of a lonely place at times. People probably laugh and make mockery, and I'm self-deprecating enough to say that a lot of my friends have fun at my expense because they think that it's just this, I'm out visiting golf courses and I live this luxury lifestyle. But man, at the end of the day, like fundamentally, you got to take care of your family. And there's a lot of things people don't see behind the scenes. It's not like getting to go to a golf course and visit and be a part of a search project or go to continued education. It's a lot of fun, but there's a lot different pressure going to those things because you got to make hay versus like being somebody who is gainfully employed by an employer who's fronting that bill and going to an attendant event.
Yep.
A lot different perspective.
Yep. No, it's a tremendously different perspective. And I go after any new customer, any new business opportunity, anything that comes my way as this is all me. This is my approach. This is my win. We're lucky enough to have grown to the level of we have a Southeast team, we have a Southwest team, we have a West Coast team. We've grown now to 16, 17 employees in the commercial ag and turf division. And we are lucky enough that GreenSight allows us to run the commercial ag division as our own business, which is fun and cool. But at the end of the day, like you say, it's like it all matters. It's really important to one, want to help that customer, but two, be pushy enough to say, well, what can I do to really make sure I win your business and balance that act of, geez, you know what? They're just super pushy. I'm not really sure we want to jump in with them yet. So you have to be like, okay, well, what else can I do for you? But it's a game. It's a performance. We're putting on a performance to then work with them and once we do gain that relationship, it's like, okay, well, yeah, what else can we do here for you? And making sure that it's all, where it's supposed to be.
I want to get into some of the stuff you guys are doing, but one last little question on this, because there's somebody that's going to listen to this podcast that is inspired by an entrepreneur who took a chance and took risk for themselves to jump into kind of no man's land. And especially at the time you did, some of the things that, the technologies, the data was somewhat new to this industry. It wasn't certainly adopted, holistically. But for the person that's sitting and listening and saying, man, I don't know if being a superintendent long term is really what I want to do. I've got this idea. I've got this sort of um, concept of where I'd like to take a company or build a company. Any advice for that person?
Yeah, just do it. You only live once. It's YOLO.
Hey,
It's
bringing it back. I love it.
it's because you don't want to regret things. You don't want to look back and she's, you know what? I was really comfortable, waking up at 4 and going into the property and making sure the irrigation system ran and making sure that, my greens mowers were accounted for and making sure that we don't have any disease pressure out there. And like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, there's days that I'm like, geez, what would it be like to actually manage turf? Right now, though, in Massachusetts in the, start of August, I'm like, glad I don't manage turf right now. Uh, there's different, it's very, very much so like still being a golf course superintendent. There's a lot of aspects. There's team, there's challenges, you have to understand like, hey, you know what, my product or whatever that potential person is doing is going to create enough influence and enough hype that people are going to want to be engaged. And you also have to be your biggest cheerleader. You find 3, 4, 5 friends that also want to be your cheerleader. Sell to your friends, make sure that it sticks, and then make sure that you're selling to your immediate group. And then heck, who knows where it goes? But it can be a tough road, but it's a fun road. At the end of the day, you're just like, wow, I created this. It's wow. Because of my vision, it's here. So,
Well, a little quote that was given to me that I like to share is regret lives in the world of should haves,
yeah.
and progress lives in the land of did. And you're a doer, so I appreciate that. And I think it's a good, little piece for anybody. And even if it's not, you want to be an entrepreneur, like, hey, like go for it. Like what's holding you back? Like mostly what is holding you back is fear,
Yeah.
a fear of the unknown and fear of lack of certainty. Right. So kudos to you. So when I think of your company, and you're right, you hit on it. When I was at Sparrows Point, I don't know if you guys had just started to dive into the drone technology, but I was fascinated. I was fascinated with it more for an educational piece to our membership about what our capabilities were and what they weren't, as much as like, hey, having those day-to-day insights. And, as I look at like the growth and evolution of your company, it's fascinating that you've got this mix of like job board, autonomous mowers, the drone technology. Kudos to you guys for like strategically fitting all those pieces into like your overall products and services. But talk us a little bit about kind of the evolution of all the tech, how it works together. And let's start with that.
Yeah. So in 2018, we ran into that. Hey, we have an awesome drone. We have an awesome job board. We need to put both of these together in the same dashboard and platform and making sure that people say, hey, Turf Cloud is the one-stop shop. And so we essentially made it the one-stop shop. And then our idea, and it still lives, that you're going to fly your drone and then be able to say, all right, well, we need to take care of this first, and we need to take care of that second. And then, you can go back to the job board and fill in the gap based on what you're seeing in the imagery, not just using it for a turf health analysis tool, even though that's primarily what customers use it for. And then in 2019, I said, we're flying from the sky. We need ground truthing evidence of what the actual imagery is telling you. And that's where our alignment with soil sensors came into play. So we came in with soil sensors and started putting soil sensors in the actual Turf Cloud dashboard. And then shortly thereafter, Husqvarna got involved and said, geez, it would be really cool if we could have autonomous mowers on your platform, and using this as the dashboard for, our mowers. So we had a collaboration with Husqvarna. And then it wasn't really any alignment with any of the strategic partners that we were already working with, but Harold's got involved. And, I'm really good friends with Mr. Nickel at Harold's. And, he's been a friend for, gosh, I don't know. I want to say 20 years, but not quite that long. Maybe In fact, I'm 41 years old. Maybe it has been 20 years. But he said, I want to create a system for my reps to go out and forecast for our products. But we don't want to have customers to pay for it. We want it to be a win-win for everybody. So our collaboration with Harold's allowed us to create this newly updated, newly revised overall dashboard that customers can come in and, create a chemical logbook and create spray sheets and create things that live on the field. So again, we're still bringing all this information together as a one-stop shop. Come to Turf Cloud, and it's 100% free. The freemium gather. Well, while you're using your job board and while you're scheduling all of your applications, let's talk about your drone. Do you know about our drone? Do you know what a drone can do for you? And let me show you the high resolution, the NDVI, near infrared imagery, the thermal imagery, and how that can parlay into your applications that you either just put out or will be putting out, and how your imagery is going to change from a turf analysis standpoint. Oh, while you're here, let's talk about your sensors. Do you want to make sure that your moisture, temperature, and salinity are on par with certain areas that you're questioning? And then, before you leave, let's talk about the mowers. What's your labor like? What's your structure like? What are you trying to do on a daily basis that's kind of a pain? Is your clubhouse under wrap? Is your wedding area or your event lawns, are those becoming problematic? Geez, you only have 4 people for 18 holes? Let's talk about a full course rough solution. Let's talk about fairways. Oh, you don't have power? Let's talk about solar. So we're making it into this, it sounds very like, geez, that's a lot of information, but we're making it very holistic. We're making it very simple, and we're making it such that all of the people on my team have that same messaging, have that same vision to align themselves with the superintendent, with the property, to help them understand how tech can really be a part of your operation, not like technology, I don't know. And so that's in a nutshell. That was a very long elevator ride, but
People on the same ride a lot, so it's okay.
it's it's a journey. It's really a journey, and it doesn't have to be like, all right, here you go, Tyler. This is what we do. It's I want to come into, we'll pretend like you're still at Sparrows Point. I want to come into your office and go for a ride around and understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then listen and fill in the gap and okay, well, how do we do at GreenSight? What are we doing? What are we doing? How can Turf Cloud become a physical assistant to your operation?
So with that being said, a follow-up for me is what's a surprising success story as you've evolved this whole product offerings integration? Is there been any surprises that you didn't think about going in that has kind of come out, from all this work you guys have done?
I mean, I think I get surprised at every customer. I get surprised at how much they use it or how they use it, how dependent they are on it. And it's okay, yeah, I take honor in that. Like, this is amazing. Like, I have customers that say flying our drones provides a peace of mind. It's like, we're not really using the imagery for like, oh yeah, geez, we need to put this out or put that out, or we need to take care of this. Like, it's peace of mind. And it's like, when people say that, it's like, okay, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm providing you peace of mind. I'm glad I'm able to let you sleep at night a little bit, better. Our job board, it's, people are, he's no longer at Oyster Harbor, but Ryan Chase said it to me best. Ryan said, I would get up at 4:00 in the morning. I'd get to the office at 4:30. I would start the job board before 5:00 so the staff was able to go. And I would sleep a little later. I'd sit in my computer, or the night before, even the afternoon before, I would set my job board up on Turf Cloud to make sure that things were there. I would collaborate with my team to make sure that what we're doing and executing our process, which, that's pretty common feedback now. It's like, we're collaborating. I want it to be a collaboration effort. That's when I was at Stowe, that's essentially my process. I want to collaborate with my turf team, not, all right, this is what we're doing today, and this is how we need to get it done. And if it's not done this way, then, we failed. And, yes, ultimately as a superintendent, that's it. It falls on your shoulders, but you need to rise up your guys on your team to make sure that they have that same ownership. And that's where the job board comes into play. It's like your team is being elevated to that same level of ownership. The mowers, I think, have become, I wouldn't say a surprise, but I still love watching the robot go out and cut grass. Like, there's honestly nothing like it. We made our break in 2022 with Husqvarna. We're still active in the Southeast, the Southwest, and the West Coast with Husqvarna. Here in the Northeast, we started carrying Cress in January, and we've had a lot of fun with Cress. We also carry Nexmo as well. And so it's my thing is, and it always has been, with the job board even, it's like, I kind of attribute it to or assimilate it to, eating ice cream. It's like, I actually don't really care what flavor you pick, as long as you're eating ice cream. If you're choosing robotic mowers, it's like, thank you for choosing robotic mowers. What brand would you like to go with? Or what flavor would you like to choose? I'll tell you what is best served for this property. I know a thing or two about, I wouldn't say all of them that are available now, but a good majority. Again, it's not surprising. It does surprise me sometimes when people are like, all right, I'm in, let's do it. Full course. It's like, okay. I usually just recommend you go after one or two just to get your feet wet, understand how they work. But it does excite me. It does excite me that people are in, and then watching the success that they have, and watching how they've implemented into their labor.
Before we started, I had mentioned to you, I hear this pretty much in almost every major search project that we're involved with about the use of technology, right? Whether it's the job boards, whether it's autonomous mowers, GPS sprayers, now drone sprayers, drone technology, right? There's a lot of that. And it's a thing that I think members look at it from an efficiency, effectiveness standpoint, as they know the challenges with labor. So when you engage with a new client that maybe hasn't integrated autonomous mowers, and let's focus on that, right?
Yep.
How do you coach them to best adopt that for their property so they get comfortable with it, confident with it, and then can kind of make that sale or realize how they can maybe redeploy labor or reorganize their operations just in that department?
So in the 3.5 years we've been really going after hard with robotic mowers, we've found that the big spots, the big turn-ons are driving ranges, our practice areas, our clubhouse grounds, our event lawns, our wedding areas. Those are the big ones. And depending on the acreage and the size of your driving range, it could be 2 mowers, it could be 5 mowers. It really depends. But when you can come alongside a customer and say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could mow your driving range for you? Like, what? Yeah, say no more. Or nowadays the lingo is say less. But it's attractive to be able to mow a driving range. If, we come alongside a customer and he's like, geez, our clubhouse, we got to mow it on Fridays. We got to mow it first, and then we got the whole golf course to worry about. And if we had a robot doing the job, man, that would be great. I just visited with a customer on Tuesday and they didn't really have a vision. They just wanted to see the robot cut grass, and we were going to go cut the wedding lawn. And the wedding lawn was like, I don't even know, less than a quarter acre, 1/10 of an acre. And I'm like, this is a really small footprint. I'm like, what if we did this for your demo? And he was like, huh, what are you thinking about? And I'm like, well, I want to plant it behind the blue tee and I want to mow the entire first tee surrounds, blue, white, and red, the alternate tee. I want to go all the way out to the fairway and I want to mow the rough everywhere here right off the clubhouse. And he was like, that'd be incredible. The hurdle that we run into, I don't like to call it a problem. The hurdle we run into is folks they don't know what they don't know. So, and most of the time they don't really understand the implementation and how things will work. So it's up to our team to help paint that picture and get that buy-in. And so I went there yesterday to pick the equipment up and he said, geez, this was better than I ever thought it would be. I was like, okay. But originally we didn't have that. Originally it was just like, we're going to cut the wedding lawn. We did cut the wedding lawn. We did cut the first tee. We did cut the alternate tee. We cut all of these areas that was like, wow. So I think when you start talking robotic mowers, it's really important to understand what the 1, 2, 3, 4 punch lists are that are really painful for you to get a hold of. And then from there, we can start talking expansion. So if we plant, 1 or 2 mowers at the first tee and wedding, and then we go over to the newly devised practice area for another 2 or 3 mowers, then membership is like, wow, this is incredible. What would happen if we put robots all over the golf course? And now we start talking about more and more and more. So the vision starts to expand and the property is being maintained autonomously. And I always say this too, it's not that we're trying to take jobs away. We're trying to be supplemental to what's already being done. So those people that are sitting on a rough mower or sitting on a fairway mower or pushing a rotary mower are highly valuable. And other capacities that don't involve sitting on a mower to mow grass and large acre turf. So let the robot come in, do the job. Find a guy or two on your team that has grown up with a cell phone in his pocket to respect technology enough to be like, oh yeah, this is easy. I'll take care of it. And then let the rest of your team go after other things on the property that actually require a brain and, things that a robot really hasn't been designed to do quite yet.
I love it, man. I think now I've seen all different versions of how clubs are adopting and using this, from clubs that are using it now predominantly to mow rough to what you just kind of described as like clubhouse lawns, driving range facilities. And it's interesting to hear the different feedback from superintendents and clubs of how they're engaging with it. And you made a comment of the hurdle to get over is more about just they just don't know what they don't know, have preconceived opinions about something versus just watching it do its work and then maybe start to look at the math around the ROI and how to redeploy certain things. I find a lot of the challenges that when I hear search committees talk about their pain points at their clubs or the challenges is, we want conditions to look similar on a Tuesday as it is on a Sunday, rough being one of those areas that's a real hard thing to get a handle on because you need a lot of bodies. You need the right equipment, and something like this could be an accelerator of getting conditions more consistent or just, like you said, kind of complementary. So do you find, I'm curious if this happens. So golf course A starts deploying the autonomous mowers. I got to imagine members see that and say, hey, I want that for my home, yo.
Oh my gosh. And
It's like a secondary, well, it could become your primary business, but it's really like a secondary referral.
yeah, it is quite fun. It is quite fun. I spent a lot of time on Tuesday up at the first tee, and naturally, if you're mapping the first tee and you're letting the mower do its thing, you're just making sure that it's going to be successful. It's just, hey, you got a card? Hey, what would it take to do my house? I'm like, well, how big is, what's the acreage? Turf professional, when you talk acreage, you're like, oh, Jesus, it's like 3/4 of an acre, acre and a half. Like they know that like quick terminology, and you say to a residential, like, what's the acreage? You're like, well, I don't know. My plot's a half acre. And I'm like, then they start like, oh, my house is this. And I'm like, all right, so you'd be good for this and, help them break it down. It's fun because you're implementing a new technology. Like obviously a robot runs in my house. And my neighborhood is like, well, geez, well, what happens if it could come cut my yard? And I'm like, well, I'm not running it across the street. I'm not running it down the street. I'm not going to, expect that it's not going to get hit by a car, but it's fun because you can start talking those types of things. Like I work with landscapers too. And, that's a whole nother avenue that we could, jump into and talk landscapers and how that can physically help their overall bottom line of their business. In the turf industry, we could get all physiology on this too. Like, the quality of cut and the amount the mowers going out and disease suppression and all those things. It's robotic mowing, I think, is very much here to stay. It's not a fad. It's not like oh yeah, that'd be cool if you aren't doing it yet, then you're gonna fall behind. It's really just that aggressive. It's just that necessary. It's just that it's important to say, okay, well, how do we do this? Or how can we do this? So
Last two questions before we jump into more of a fun, lighthearted segment. So now you've been out of being a superintendent. You've built a company, you've sold a company, you've kind of seen things from a very different lens, right? If you were to look back and say, here's one thing I would do differently as a superintendent, or some words of wisdom that you've learned that you would share now, what would that be?
words of wisdom in being a superintendent or just in life.
And maybe both, whatever direction you want to go.
I will say that the golf course is always going to be there. We'll sidestep, and to that I mean like the golf course is always going to be there. Your family is, in my opinion, your family, my family is most important. It's time with your significant other, it's time with your children, it's time with your pets, it's time that you're never going to get back. And so don't really think that, well, my family's always going to be there. I got to go take care of the golf course. I gotta spend an extra hour, rounding the greens and making sure that like, yes, your job is important too. You got to obviously feed your family and keep a roof over their heads, but surrounding yourself in the golf course world, surrounding yourself with a good team, good people that you trust, good people that will, go to bat for you, and if they're going to go to bat for you, you got to go to bat for them. So it's a balancing act and making sure that you're taking care of both. I'm taking care of my family. I'm making sure that I'm giving them enough time. And then at work, I'm also, taking care of my employees and my people and making sure that they want to go to bat for me, making sure that they want to go out and carry out my vision as the superintendent. And obviously you can't give 100% to being a superintendent and 100% to being a father and a husband, but that's always been my ultimate goal, to burn the candle at both ends and, see what comes of it. I was lucky, personally. I'll share a short story. I was very lucky. I was 22 years old. My new girlfriend, now wife, was 19, and I was the South Course superintendent. We were running 36 holes of golf. It was a weekend that we had to go in and greens, and the North Course superintendent got a hold of me and said, "Hey, do you mind covering, my course?" It was kind of a low pressure environment. I was like, "Yeah, sure, I got you. No problem." My girlfriend at the time said, "Do you want my help?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not? Come in and, we'll drive around together." And as you do at 22 and 19, and we had an irrigation break on the North Course, which wasn't my course, but obviously both courses are under the umbrella. So she said, "Well, how can I help?" And I said, "Well, here's the freedom codes and best of luck." She was like, "So you just want me to drive around the whole golf course and turn the heads on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I normally just throw them on for 3 and then I go back around and I throw on the other ones that I need to for a little longer and just drive around and throw them all on for 6. But you're probably going to run to play." So, one thing after the next. So about an hour and a half goes by and she finds me on the 18th hole at the North Course and says, "I'm all done." And I'm like, "You're all done?" She's like, "Yep, every green got 6 minutes. You need anything else?" And I'm like, "Yeah, geez, I could really use some help going over to the pump and, you stay here and I'm going to go over to the pump and turn things on." And so just like that, and I'm telling the story for the reason of why in a second. 22 and 19 years old, we were children. She never had experience on a golf course. She didn't have a turf degree. She didn't go to school for grass. She didn't have an internship. She just was there for me. And fast forward, we just celebrated, well, not just celebrated, we're about to celebrate our 16th wedding anniversary. She'd wake up in the middle of the night. We'd have a thunderstorm rolling in. "Jay, do you turn the computer off, the irrigation computer?" I'd use log me in. I'd punch in. I'd turn the stuff off. It's important to not just align yourselves with customers to be successful in the sales world. It's important to not just assign yourselves with successful assistants and people that are going to help carry your team. It's essentially and most important to align yourself with a spouse, a significant other that is there for you. It's your ride or die. My wife has been there from the very beginning. We're dating for 3 months and she was going to go freedom the South Course. Yeah, it's very long-winded words of advice, but aligning yourselves with the right people in your journey is ultimately going to help your success.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's shift to our fun segment we like to call chip shots. And I always like to kick it off with, if you had to pick your favorite foursome, who would it be with and where would it be at?
Man, I've thought about that question before. And my quick answer, living or anyone?
Anyone.
I would say my grandfather, we used to call him Chief. He's no longer with us. Absolute legend. The guy, until he was 82, shot his age. Like every year, 71. Yep, shot my age. Shot under my age, So my grandfather, my father, and my son. And we would play Garden City Men's Club.
Very cool. I've not heard that one. That's a good one. What's one course you haven't seen, but it's on your bucket list?
I haven't seen, but it's on my bucket list. Seminole.
All right, Nelson, if you're hearing, let's hook Jason up. Let's get him down there. Come on, man.
I went back and forth with Nelson before he was at Seminole about flying drones and doing other things, and we just never got it to work. But I do know Nelson.
More powerful tool, a drone or a well-trained crew?
Wow. I would have to say both, because if you have a drone and you don't have a well-trained crew, that drone's going to be worthless. But if you have a well-trained crew and you don't have a drone, then are you missing some of the pieces? I think if you're flying drones, it's going to help you learn more about the property, whether you've been there for 3 months or 30 years. So I say both.
What's one part of the country that you've been to, and specifically for golf course management, that you feel is like underserved, underrepresented, or misunderstood that you've seen, or understated, and not really given the recognition it deserves?
I would say, man, and I just visited there. I would say Michigan, the Great Lakes region. It is just, in my opinion, it's just absolutely gorgeous out there. And I don't think enough people actually pay attention to it. I really don't. So
one of our team members, Mary Maloney, she's based in just outside of Detroit, and we're partners with the Michigan Superintendents Association. And I love going out there. It's
yeah.
a great group of people. It's funny you made that comment of sort of maybe underestimated or, things of that nature, but a really, really good group of people.
I think most people might actually forget about them. You don't like, oh yeah, geez, it's the New England region or it's the Jersey region or transition or DC area or, oh yeah, Florida or South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, oh yeah, Georgia's got, Augusta National. So naturally Georgia, it's, you go down to Texas, and PJ Frisco is a thing now. You go out to California, it's like people kind of forget about the Great Lakes. And I visited with Ian Daniels at the Country Club of Jackson, and I had a absolute ball. I was out there for 2-3 days, and I've known Ian for years, and it's just a really cool spot.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you joining with us here today and look forward to seeing you probably at some regional conferences in the very near future. It's crazy. It's August 1st, not far from the Carolinas, New Jersey Expo. It'll be here before we know it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.